Hello and welcome to True Audio with Johnnie Truesdale. This is episode 11, Compressors, Basic Controls. So compressors is something that audio engineers get asked about a lot, and it's basically an automatic level control, a little guy with a fader, if you will. I'm not going to really go into too deep detail of how to use compressors and when to use compressors. I could do that on a future video. This episode is going to be dedicated just to the basic controls and understanding what each one does. And I think when you understand the basic controls, that it will lead you down the road to using compressors in your own way. So without further ado, here's episode 11. Alright, here we are in Pro Tools, and I have a session up by the band The Great Fraud. They're a great blues rock band from New Jersey. I'll put their information up on the screen. You can check them out. So I have the drums up here, and then I have the snare soloed for purposes. We're going to listen to the snare. So this is the Pro Tools standard, comes with Pro Tools compressor. And we're going to take a look at the basic controls, which are right here. And most compressors have these basic controls. I will show you a couple other compressors that do not have these basic controls. So the first control that I want to talk about is threshold. So threshold is where the compressor actually starts to work. It's the level setting in which the compressor starts to work. You can see this knob right here, and you can see it in this display here. Now, not all compressors have displays like this, so you have to get used to hearing it and using your meters to see where things are happening. So, or hear, I should say, or hear where things are happening. So let me just play this snare here. And you can see where it actually crosses the threshold and then lowers the gain reduction right here. So it's only grabbing it on the really loud parts, and it's pulling it down around 3 or 4 dB here. Okay. Now, if I were to pull that threshold down, and most threshold knobs go from right to left, there are exceptions to the rule, but most go from right to left, lowering the threshold counterclockwise. So here we go. So you can see there, when I lowered the threshold, it compressed the entire time, not just on the loud hits. The threshold is where it starts to actually compress. Okay, let's take a look at this right here. This is ratio. And ratio is how much you are compressing it, how much compression you are using. So if we get something, let's go to here. Let's do a standard. This is a 3-to-1 ratio. 3-to-1 is really easy to figure out here. Just flip them around and make it like a fraction. So it's 1/3. It will take the volume and bring it down to 1/3 of where it was. It will compress it 3-to-1. Now, you can get all technical about it, but just know that the higher the ratio that you're using, the more compression you're actually using. Most compressors, it's 2-to-1, 4-to-1, 6-to-1, 8-to-1, and at 10-to-1 is where you start limiting. So there's not a whole lot of, even though this compressor can go somewhere in between, and this is in particular 3-to-1 at this point, it's just how much you're compressing. So it's how much it actually pulls it down, pulls the volume down. Okay, so more compression, and you'll see it here. So let me change that. Let me play it again, and I'll change the compression ratio. So you could see it went all the way down to -6, and after about 10 to 1, the ratio, the gain reduction usually doesn't change as much. The sound will change a little bit, but after 10 to 1, the actual gain reduction doesn't tend to change that much in most compressors. Okay, so let's look at the attack and release. So the attack is where it starts to happen, where it grabs in the actual waveform, where it starts to compress. So I know I said this is where it starts to compress, but this is how fast it actually works after it starts. So if that makes a little bit of sense. And let me show you here with this compressor here. I'm going to make it a really fast attack, which means it'll start working right away. And then I will make it a slower attack, and it will let more of those initial transients through. So here we go again. You can hear in the fast attack, which in this case is all the way to the left, that it cuts off some of the snap of the snare. So you have to be very careful on things like kicks and snares when you go with too fast of an attack, because you could take away the snap of the actual transient, depending upon the instrument that you're using. But this is the basic gist of them. Some are really fast. That is really, really fast. And this is 300 milliseconds, which is fairly slow for an attack. Okay, release is where it lets go of the signal. So you'll watch the reduction when it hits, how fast it actually goes back to normal after it lets go of it. Okay, so here we go again. So you could see when I was all the way to the right, which was a really, really slow release, the reduction was going back really slow. So it was staying compressed almost the entire time. I had to get somewhere in between where it would kind of compress and then release and then compress and release, kind of with the hits. It's something you just have to listen for and watch your meters. It's kind of like a combination thing. The other control that I want to talk about right here, and not all compressors have this, but this is the knee. And in a knee, now right here we have just a regular hard knee compressor right here. And it goes much quicker into the ratio once it meets that hard knee. If I make that knee a soft knee, you can see that turns right there, so it eases into the compression. Okay, on the old DBX compressors, on DBX compressors, this was known as over easy compression. You may have heard of over easy compression. Is the same thing. So it's just an easing into versus going straight into the compression. It's just another setting. When do you use it? You can use it in just about anything as long as it sounds right. Over easy or hard knee, it depends on what you're looking for. It's going to be a little bit of a difference. And the last one that I want to talk about here as far as controls is the gain or the makeup gain. Most of them are called makeup gain. So if you're compressing it, that acts as a level control, but it could lower the volume. And what we may want to do is, okay, so we want to lower the volume, even it out a little bit, and then turn it up accordingly. We don't always want to use it where it just lowers the volume and that's all we want to do with it. We may want to lower the volume and then boost up the overall level. That usually makes something sit in a mix a little bit better. One more last thing that I'd like to talk about before I go and I show you some of the other compressors that you'll see out there and where those settings are is your meters over here. You generally have an input meter, what's going on with your output, and a gain reduction. Now, not all compressors will show you all three at once. You have to switch through them a lot of times. So let me open up another compressor here. And this is a very common compressor. And this is Universal Audio 1176. So you're saying, well, these don't have all the same things that the other one has. Well, it has most of the same things. It has fixed ratios, 4, 8, 12, and 20. And it has an attack and a release. But it has an input and an output, so your output is like your makeup gain. But there's no threshold, because the threshold is fixed on 1176, depending upon what ratio you set. And your input is used as your threshold. Now, one thing to note on 1176s is the knobs here on the attack and the release are backwards. Faster over to the right, slower over to the left. Faster to the right, slower to the left. So that's our 1176 there, and those settings. This is the DBX 160, and this is what I was talking about with the over easy compression that it has here. And this one has a threshold. It has no attack and release. It has amount of compression, which is your ratio right here, and you can set your ratios. And then it has a makeup gain. And as you can see, you can change your meters right here as well. Here's the SSL channel strip, and this is the compressor. Here it just has a fast attack button, and it has a release control, a ratio control, and a threshold. It has no makeup gain. That's the way it actually works. Now, this threshold works opposite of other thresholds. As you turn to the right, it lowers the threshold. It's a little different than the rest of them. Okay. Now let's take a look at the LA2A. The LA2A is probably the most basic of all of the main compressors that you'll see out there. It has peak reduction, which is basically amount of compression that you want, and it has makeup gain. Everything else is set internally. It's kind of the way it works. Does the LA2A work on everything? No, it doesn't. It tends to not fare as well on fast transient stuff like drums, but things like bass and vocals, it tends to do very well. I'm not saying that it'll never work on drums. Before I get anybody out there that says that, you never know, but generally that's the way the LA2A works. Compression, makeup gain. It's rather easy. As you can see here is your gain reduction, and your output. It doesn't have an input on this one in particular. So that's all I got for this week. Practice them. Practice these, understanding each one. Move them around so you can hear what they do. As you do that, you'll understand what to do more, and you have to listen. The visuals are nice, but you always have to use your ears. So with that, I'll see you guys next week.